There's no justice for the working man, and nothing comes for free to us working men. So much corruption from the waking man.
This is Steve Zeltzer with WorkWeek, and today we're talking about the struggle in the case of Erek Slater. He's a longtime member of Chicago Transit Authority, ATU Local 241, who in Chicago representing bus drivers. And also he's joined today with us Nick Krietman, who's a labor lawyer who is representing him. And Erek has been in a long struggle. He's been a transit worker for 17 years. And during the course of that time, he's been fighting for democracy in his union against the attacks by management in the middle of COVID, the attack on bus drivers, the conditions they face. And he has also been fired twice. This is his second time being fired, and is been threatened physically and not only by the management of the CTA, but also unfortunately by union officials. So thanks for joining us, Nick and Erek. How did you get involved in activism in the local?
Well, so we're an industrial union. We represent the bus workers and many bus workers in Chicago with the Chicago Transit Authority and Pace Suburban. We have over 5,000 active members, and we have perhaps over 4,000 retirees. So it's a significant industrial union. I think you asked also about the most recent termination. Nick probably can talk a little bit about that, but basically by June of 2020, there was a big upsurge, massive protests around the country and around the world, fighting against police repression, state repression, and the murder of George Floyd. And there was a few transit workers who stood up and said that they would not transport police on their public transportation buses in Minneapolis. That local, ATU Local 10005, put out a good statement in support of those drivers, those workers. And then our international union also backed it, basically saying that we had the OSHA rights, the rights to not have to work in unsafe conditions. And I simply read that verbatim to workers in a normal union meeting, and management was scared. They were spooked. That weekend, they had 1,000 people were put in jail for demonstrating. They shut down Chicago Transit Authority. They locked us out, and they accused me of leading a wildcat strike and fired me shortly thereafter. I'm still fired from that. So that's the situation. I'm also a 3-term board member, elected 3 times by my coworkers. As you said, a 17-year veteran Chicago Transit Authority bus operator. And I've been elected by my coworkers to be their shop steward and executive board member 3 times. And unfortunately, the current officials have signed an order under the table with management to allow management to call the police. In the same location, I drive the bus and defend my coworkers, making it nearly impossible to do the work that I'm required to do as a union representative. And now workers have asked me to run for president of the union, and now management is still trying to use that and other improper orders to interfere in our union and workers' rights to choose their leadership. So that's where we're right in the middle of the fight. We have I'm on the ballot. That was another fight we had to do. Amazingly, we are on the ballot, and workers will have a choice to be able to retake their union and reform it so that they can use it as they see fit. So our election's coming in December 6th, and we may have a runoff election December 20th. And this is in the context of, as you mentioned, COVID, but a lot of passengers are very frustrated at the situation with the Chicago Transit Authority, the violence on the buses, the poor service. And there are several passenger groups calling for the resignation of the top CTA official as we speak. So it's a very heady situation. It's a good moment for workers to take control of their union and use it.
Okay, thanks, Erek. And obviously, you've been fighting for democracy in your union and for the membership to have control. Nick, have you seen many cases like this where an executive board member of a union is running for office and both the management and union officials are threatening him and trying to harass him and prevent him from speaking out?
He has an opportunity now, even though he's terminated, to still run and change the leadership of ATU Local 241, a tremendously important public sector union here in Chicago. The campaign against Erek is years long. They previously terminated
Nick,
him
Nick,
for
Nick,
insubordination.
Nick, it might be better if you turned your video off. You might get a better sound and audio.
Let me do that.
Okay,
Okay, how's this? Any better?
much better, much better. Yeah.
Okay, so Erek's situation, his opportunity that he has right now is to change the leadership of the ATU Local 241, a tremendously important public sector union here in Chicago. He has an opportunity to do something that could be an example for labor unions across America and internationally. The campaign to stop what Erek's attempting to build, a worker-led union, has been going on for years, and I've been personally involved in helping Erek fight for a more democratic union, providing better services to the public. The CTA's previously terminated Erek for quote unquote insubordination, for discussing working conditions with his fellow bus operators. He was reinstated at arbitration. They previously took away his union office and disrupted his ability to speak in support of the Chicago Teachers Union during a round of negotiations, advocating for smaller class sizes, a number of other issues affecting every parent in Chicago. And again, they accused him of starting a wildcat strike. That was from testimony in the first hearing. Ultimately, we won that unfair labor practice. It was found to be a pretext. Erek wasn't organizing some kind of wildcat strike. Now, with this most recent termination, they've rolled out the same exact pretext. Erek starting a wildcat strike. No evidence, no flyers, no text messages. Erek was simply speaking the voice of the International Union, reading a statement published by the International Union and communicating that to his coworkers. So the last 2 years have been a struggle, and Erek has been working diligently to build a campaign to try and reform this union that he's a member of and on the board. And you know, he's taken flack from all sides, and we'll see if he's able to succeed on the 6th. And thereafter, we do have a hearing forthcoming with the Illinois Labor Relations Board, where we hope we will get another reinstatement of Erek.
And it seems that it's not only the CTA management which has terminated Erek, but also the union leadership has physically threatened him verbally at meetings, tried to get him arrested. What is the history of this? I mean, it seems that you're being challenged not only by management, but your own union leadership.
Well, I'll let Erek speak to that. I mean, I will note that it's been 2 years and the CTA has already moved to arbitrate Erek's discharge. There hasn't been a response yet from the union, despite our multiple letters requesting assistance from the International to move his case to arbitration and have the full force of the local union behind Erek and his termination grievance. But I'll let Erek speak to the politics of what you asked.
You're fighting for the membership. You want a membership-run union where the rank and file is in control. Maybe that's what they're afraid of. They're afraid of the rank and file taking control of the local. Do you think that may be why they're so adamantly against you, Erek?
Yeah, no, they're not so much afraid of me. They're afraid of my coworkers, and that I will get out of their way. Basically, I mean, I'm in the garages now talking with maintenance workers, clerical workers, bus operation workers. And, you know, the basic thing we're talking about is taking back our union from the clutches of management. And it's very deep in this local. It's a problem around North America, around the world. But this union does have a serious sickness with hand in glove unionism, business unionism, where behind closed doors, almost everything's done behind the backs of the ranks. And, you know, workers are extremely angry about that. They, you know, CTA, Chicago Transit Authority, just gave us a multi-million-dollar bribe a few days ago, literally like 3% of our wages. And workers are saying, where were you 2 years ago when we were dying from COVID? Where were you with the hazard pay? And, oh, you're just going to force feed us this? And what about having a discussion and debate internally within our union about whether this is enough, right? Why aren't you putting this in our contract? That type of thing, right? And this has been going on for a long time. The COVID pandemic was used as an excuse to get rid of our democratic rights within the union, having these Zoom meetings, no mass membership meetings at all, having only board meetings on Zoom in which they can just click a button and get rid of me, right, or get rid of anybody they don't want on the meetings. That has been a real horrible situation for our union, and it's meant a worsening of the conditions of the passengers. Right, we're now facing the situation where, because the union has been de-teethed, that management has been so able to push workers to the bone, and unjustly fire so many hundreds of us, that the service is so poor and the violence is so bad that people don't want to take the buses unless they absolutely have to, and those that have to are up in arms against this. So the democratic reform movement is directly related to workers' power, is directly related to the services that the people of Chicago need. So it's like Nick said, it's been a long struggle, but we really have a great opportunity right now, and we're very excited to be able to do this. One thing Nick didn't talk about, maybe we can talk a little more about, is we're going to the garages, and as soon as we go, management confronts me, comes up and says, you need to leave, right? And so we basically quote the law, which I'll let Nick do in a moment, and then they say, oh, well, we're going to call the police. And they're breaking the law by interfering in our union meetings. We have the right to have in our break area. We ain't blocking any buses or anything like that. We're just discussing the politics, the direction of our union, the necessary reforms that need to happen, and they are getting involved in the way of our democratic rights. Maybe Nick can talk more about that.
Nick, is that true? I mean, they're blocking his democratic rights as a union member, union leader, to even have discussions with the membership?
In Illinois, public employees have a rather extensive right to engage in concerted activity. What Erek's describing are discussions about the direction of the union and improving working conditions in non-work areas among off-duty employees, where there's a custom and practice of having candidates for union leadership during election season come in and solicit support from their coworkers to change the union and improve the working conditions. So really, CTA is putting its thumb on the scale of this current union election. We're trying to remedy that with an unfair labor practice. We'll see what kind of legal avenues we take. We're exploring all options. But honestly, this is going to come down to the strength of worker organizing. And Erek's doing a hell of a job. He's still going and meeting with workers, and sometimes the enforcement of rights requires warm bodies, less so than ink on paper or typing into a legal brief. And this may be one of those situations. The Illinois Labor Relations Board, God bless all of the public employees who work there. But sometimes, it's not a SNAP institution. It's a separate administrative agency that has to then petition a circuit court to enforce an injunction to get activity to stop. So there's a lot of unknowns in terms of timelines. It's a rather interesting agency, and during the Rauner years, it became even harder for workers to access relief through their processes. They even charge, if you win at a hearing, for example. I'm a member of the National Employment Lawyers Association, the Illinois chapter, and we're trying to reverse a rule that actually charges workers who take unfair labor practices to hearing. You receive a bill for thousands of dollars sometimes just to have your own hearing, and there's no monetary award with the hearing. When we won our unfair labor practice because they were interfering with Erek's ability to talk to coworkers, last time tearing down flyers in support of the Chicago Teachers Union around the garage, we took them to hearing, we won, and then we get charged thousands of dollars with the quarter fees, which is it's truly head scratching. So it's an agency that is interesting to say the least to work with. We're working with that and exploring other options.
And Erek, there are other workers that you fought for in your garage workers who've been fired for raising health and safety issues. Has there been a concerted effort to get rid of militants and activists, terminate them from employment by the CTA?
Yeah, there's a long history of it. We go back to the 1968 Wildcat strike, which is in some sense a strike against the racist union officials. And this was during the height of the Black Power movement. A lot of retirees actually were active in that. Then we had a strike in 1979, more economic reasons. And so a lot of those people are still around with that experience. There's been several workers who became union leaders, who were targeted, who were forced out of the property. There is definitely a chill in this workplace. We just held a Zoom meeting, last night, right? And workers are so scared that they don't put their faces and their names on it, right? When
I thought this is a democracy here in this country.
Yeah,
Not for workers.
right, and they're concerned sometimes, obviously for management, but also sometimes when you're not sure whether the union official's on your side, you're kind of taking it in two directions. So it's a very difficult situation. It's been going on for a long time. So this is an opportunity for workers to try to break through some of that, and that's why we're getting a lot of support with this candidacy to take the top presidential spot, to be able to immediately create committees of the locals of the rank so the ranks can fill in the union and take control of it immediately, to have education classes, labor history classes, labor law classes. Maybe Nick can teach some of those, and others, and basically build up the knowledge base of the ranks so that we're not pushed around so much by management and their illegal activities, the city administration, and that this can build up the strength of a union that can start being independent, of not being controlled by management, and being able to have its own ability to make its own decisions and chart its own course. And in this situation, that's directly related to the violence. It's one of the biggest issue that we're facing. One of the biggest, besides money, perhaps, is violence. People are getting on the bus. The bus is crowded, or it didn't show up. It was ghosted, as they're calling it in Chicago now. The service is infrequent, especially in those areas of the city who have the least service. Oftentimes, Black and Latino areas. Oftentimes, people, working class sections. You have to wait very long to get a bus if you can get it all, or a train. And so once you waited for it, you see this bus operator who's also frustrated because they didn't get enough time at the end of the run, because they're being harassed, because to even take an unpaid day off, like FMLA rights, that they have private investigators going after us. They have all this paperwork, third party stuff. It's a big, humongous mess. And we're under a great deal of pressure as the frontline transit workers, maintenance workers, et cetera. And so this is a powder keg. And now they're trying to force us to charge $2.50 for the person who doesn't got it. And it's violence. It's violence a lot. And so this is what if workers can take control of their union, the union can start separating itself from management control. And that means the policies of the Chicago Transit Authority, the Regional Transportation Authority, that is coming down on our communities. Instead, the union can be another way forward. We can be calling for union scale jobs. Hundreds of them, for the unjustly terminated workers to be rehired. They claim they can't get enough workers. They can't, right? They treat us so badly. People know how bad this job is. They can't get people to do this job and to keep them. So what we need to do as a union is make this job a lot better and fight for our communities to be able to get these union scale jobs and be seen as a center of power in the city that we should. We're the most powerful union in the city by far, right? The transit workers, we can shut down the city if we so choose, if we had the support of the population. And that is the power that has been handcuffed and taken from the working class of Chicago, that the workers of ATU Local 241 have an opportunity to take back and change on December 6th. So it's a huge opportunity. And
transit workers are not alone. You talk about stress, getting time off to go to a doctor. The railway workers may be going on strike in December. Workers have died because they were afraid of going to a doctor for fear of being terminated. They don't have sick leave. It seems like the stress now on transit workers, public transit workers, and railroad workers is becoming unbearable for a large number of workers now.
Yeah, what a lot of passengers and public don't know is they see the nice uniform and they might see the top pay after a worker's been there for a while, and they say, okay, well, they've got it, you know, they're in the middle class. And to a degree, I think we would agree that we are privileged in some regards. We have a pension if we can survive 26 years. You know, we have a contract if you can find a union steward. Right? We have. I'm not just trying to be humorous here. It is a significant difference to have a union. It's massively, but what ends up happening is your paycheck gets all this other things taken out of it. So that pension, you have to pay for it, which is kind of ridiculous. You work, you're supposed to get the pension. You're not supposed to have to pay for it. The healthcare, you're supposed to get it. No, we have to pay it, right? Or pay part of it. And even when you're retired,
that's called cost shifting.
Right? Yeah, cost
having
shifting.
The workers pay more and more of the cost.
We don't need any of that stuff. We don't need to be bothered by that. We just need to concentrate on safely operating these vehicles, safely bringing people to where they need to be, the schools, the hospitals, to work. That's our work. That's the work we do, and we do it very well. And all this other stuff has come in and really harmed this beautiful job. This job which you're a leader of the community, you're a leader of the street. And many of us do that work even under these conditions. Much of what happens for the front line and all the transit workers is you end up having to spend much of the day at work. You have these swing shifts, especially at the garage. I've been working on the last decade or so. Is you start work at 3, 4 in the morning. You start a shift to get people to work, right? Because you have to get to work before they do. Then you finish that work because they don't want to pay you when you're not driving the bus, obviously. But then you have to stay at work because you can't drive, an hour and a half home to take a break and then drive another hour and a half back. Driving, by the way. Meanwhile, this is the job you do. You're supposed to take a break from driving, and you end up being there 13 or more hours. You get home and you just collapse. You get back, you have to do it again. And when you say to the boss, "Man, I just need a day off. I don't need pay. I need to be out," they say, "No." Right? We own you. We own you. And it doesn't matter what the emergency is. Look, the population, who do you want driving your bus? You want a family, someone who's got a family, a responsible person. Well, we have families. We have responsibilities to our elders. We have responsibilities to our children. We have so many things we have to be doing. The city of Chicago and all cities that have public transportation should be giving the necessary breaks to this extremely stressful, extremely dangerous work. And we have to be able to have the freedom to be able to self-organize in our labor union, to be able to build that power, to force it, because nobody else is going to do it. The city powers don't care about public transportation. They don't take it, right? They have their own yachts and all that, fancy cars and so on. It's the working class that takes it, especially now during this pandemic. So we have an opportunity to join with the communities that need public transportation, that take our buses and trains, along with the workers that do it, and create quite a powerful force.
And you also were elected to go to your convention, and apparently you had to fight to even get to your convention. And at the same time, there are other presidents of unions, Valerie Jefferson, New Orleans, who've been fired by management. So it seems like there's a pattern going on around the country of management targeting union officials who do fight back and fight for democracy in the membership.
Well, I would point to that. I would point simultaneously to an uptick in activity of the ranks. I went to the convention in Las Vegas. Our ATU International, Amalgamated Transit Union International, represents transit workers in Canada and the United States, 200,000 families. It's a very, very powerful organization in the world. And we have our conventions every 3 years. I'm, through my position as an executive board member of a garage about between 450 and 600 workers. I am the delegate for that workplace, and it's a lot of workers. A lot of cities don't have that many workers for the public transportation. Chicago has the second largest public transportation system in the United States, behind New York. So we send our delegates based upon the number of workers to this convention every 3 years. And what I saw this time was that there was multiple strikes. And of course, we've been watching this, but you could see the difference in the international convention. I also saw some of this from reports from the UAW convention, and perhaps also Teamsters. We see this there is some reform efforts that have getting a bit more traction than we have seen in perhaps one or two generations. That's a historically significant thing that I saw. Now, I was in the middle of a fight in this convention. The local officials tried to use their local authority to, behind closed doors, vote to remove my coworker's right to have a delegate. And so at 4 o'clock in the morning on the 18th of September, I was in Midway Airport getting on a plane. And they said, "Oh no, your name's not on the plane." So I had to buy a ticket to go to Las Vegas, and scramble to get housing and fight in the credentials committee. And we had a good war for 2.5 days. We ended up losing 11-10, which was a great fight. And we got a lot of sympathy from other locals. And I could see a lot of these workers were being maybe not targeted, but were undemocratically being removed from their rights to this international convention. You mentioned Valerie from New Orleans, who had I'll just briefly mention her, that she had been able to negotiate an agreement with management as the president of the local, and then the management backed off and said, "No, we're not going to do it." And she called them on it, and then they fired her. They fired the president of the union on the spot, right? And she's still fired, and that ain't cool. And did
that come up at the convention? I mean, here you have presidents of locals being terminated by management, basically to prevent them from carrying out their responsibility to represent the members. That you would think should be an issue for all ATU workers and at the International Convention. I mean, she should have been brought up there and said, "Look, we can't not allow this, because if you can get rid of a president of a local who stands up for the members, what does that say to the membership about your union?"
I saw the usual stuff that I've seen. I've been in 3 of these conventions the last 9 years, whatever it's been, in Toronto, and we also conventions in Las Vegas. And they roll out the usual big Democratic bigwigs that are pushing the Democratic Party. And in my view, this is really a dead end. That workers really need to find their own independent course, perhaps even forming another party. The Republican Democratic parties have made clear that they're not on the side of working people. So that was the big stuff that they discussed. But I also saw there was a move for and a successful move to get a resolution passed in the International Convention for COLA plus one, the cost of living allowance plus 1%, which is very positive. If we can have this in our contracts nationwide, then we don't have to keep on fighting every year to get a contract just to keep up with inflation. So that was a positive development. I saw lots of positive things going on in an otherwise difficultly bureaucratically crusted over situation that's really trapped by the Democratic Party for a long time.
And there was a resolution there from the Minneapolis local for a workers' party. You've had the position that workers should really run the world. I mean, the United States is breaking down the healthcare system. You have privatized healthcare. Workers are dying because they can't get healthcare or going bankrupt. You have a situation public services are being privatized, contracted out. There should be more funds going to public services, to transit, to public service agencies. With COVID and everything else, it seems like the opposite is taking place. So how are workers going to run the world? How is that going to happen? Do you see that through a Labor Party, which did come up at your convention, or how do you see that politically happening? Does it come up from the ground up?
Well, this might be one of the last times I get to talk to you this freely, Steve, because if my coworkers elect me, I'm going to have to put on a hat and say, "Hey, these are my views, and these are the views of my coworkers." Right? I've been very open. I'm a revolutionist. I'm a socialist. I come from a family of that. But for me, that basically means that capitalism isn't the end of history. There's something after it, and working people internationally must decide what that is and build that new society. That's what it means for me. We don't know what it'll be, but we do know, we're very confident that capitalism has overstayed its welcome, and working people can do a much better job. So how that's going to play out, I don't know exactly, but I do know it's not going to be through the Democratic or Republican Party. They're unreformable. They're captured by the capitalist class in this country, the boss class. And we're going to have to find other organizations of struggle and other organizations of self-rule. We need to make sure we eat and have the necessities of life. We need to be able to form a government at some point. Working people, we're the great majority. So that's we're along those lines, and workers taking back and using their unions is a very positive thing for humanity. It's a very positive thing for everybody in the world, especially such an important union in the center of the United States. We impact people all in countries all over the world because of the political and economic and military might of the United States. So this is an important issue, and I hope that people help these workers to take back their union. I hope that everyone who cares about working people assist this union. And if any of my coworkers are harmed, if management tries to push and attack our union, our pension rights, our pensioners, that we surround this union and protect it, that people around the world protect it. That's how important we are, how important this union is.
And of course, not just for even unionized workers, there's an attack on Medicare, privatization of Medicare, all the benefits that workers have won in this country through struggle and movement. Nick, do you see a rise in working class movement or workers fighting back and saying we need a democratic independent trade union movement that fights for the rank and file? It seems like there is in the United States a growing struggle for unionization. Workers, young workers particularly, Starbucks and many other places, Amazon, they're fed up and they believe that they need a union to survive in this world.
It's happening inside and outside of union workplaces. In my practice, I handle employees who are involved in unions and reforming unions like Erek, and also employees who are acting together to talk back to the boss to address issues that concern them in their workplaces. I represent a group of orthopedic assistants who were tired of the harassment by one of the doctors. And we're going forward. They laid off the entire staff and are restaffing it on the pretext of remodeling the office. So, that to me is what needs to happen at every workplace, union or not, is coworkers getting together, discussing what impacts them at work and acting on it. I think we've had a lot of positive examples of people getting together and changing the course of their union at the UAW. Certainly it had some help with the investigations, just uncovering what the collaboration between the union tops and the executives at various auto companies led to. It led to stagnation in the union. It led to the collapse of the union for the ability to bargain and organize non-union auto plants. We see it in TDU's victory at the Teamsters. So there's a lot of positive developments. I mean, geez, we just saw it with the rail worker union rebuke with some of the rail unions wanting to fight for more. We'll see how that plays out. I mean, it's going to take an organized effort among unionists to change their unions and collaborate with those looking to organize their own unions, like at Amazon, Starbucks, to have the big marquee examples of it. But yeah, I do see a change of it. And, maybe one avenue for that's accessing the legalistic rights afforded to private sector workers under the NLRB and the Illinois Public Labor Relations Act for public employees. But really, it's going to come down to what the workers decide to do and really put some muscle into the exercise of the rights, first and foremost.
And this coming year, there's 750,000 workers whose contracts expire. UPS workers, over 350,000 workers. You may have a rail strike. What should unions do, Erek, in your view, to back each other up? Because I know that there has not really been a national political education campaign by the leadership of the rail workers union to explain to workers in this country the dire straits that railroad workers are in. They're stressed, the fact they can't take off for sick day. It seems like these are general issues, not just issues for railroad workers. Your members, you say, face the same issues.
Well, one thing you always mention, Steve, is the need for labor media. We definitely can't rely on the big business press. They're burying our struggles. There's so many industrial strikes going on. The that some of the coal workers, Alabama, been going on strike
That's
for what,
over a year
year
now.
and a
It's kind
half.
of disappeared. Yeah, year and a
Who
half.
knows about
And
that if you're not from that area? And that's one of the most important strikes going on, and very well organized strike, very militant workplace. There's many strikes going on, and many, not just strikes, but mass actions by workers, reform efforts, and so on. It just is completely blank. You don't know about it. You have this social media stuff that might get some of it, but not much. So there needs to be a concerted effort, and I think the unions have a strong position to do this, to be able to coordinate the communication of actions on a local level to the national and international level. I see it with my own eyes in the ATU. You see a strike that just happened in the Toronto area, and this was not known really by many of the unionists, even within the ATU. Yeah, we have a little. We tried to do a bit. I understand the ATU International came out and supported the local leaders, and we had a victory. Beat back some of the labor laws, and also had a 4-day strike. And very few people know anything about this, perhaps even in Canada. And so
the ATU has millions and millions of dollars. They could have a media team going to that strike, interviewing workers, having a live channel, ATU, so they can broaden it out and get support throughout the country.
Yes, I think you could do that on a shorter strike. I think transit strikes sometimes are pretty short because they shut down the whole city. But on bigger, longer knockdown strikes, one of the best things to do is send workers to other cities and back and forth to see it, to go to the picket line and see the human solidarity. It's a transformative thing. People who haven't done it have to do it, because it's like, oh, I didn't know people could do this, right? And they could be so human with each other, and giving of food and resources, of being selfless, of making sacrifices, and hundreds of thousands of workers doing this, day after day. It builds up your love of humanity, doing this. And so that's something which is lost when we don't communicate these strikes and these actions between cities. So that's a major impact of the situation. So something like a labor party, a labor federation that was doing this consciously, and it wouldn't need to necessarily take any seats of power in Congress, or it would just, if it could just do strike solidarity, if it could just do communication of the actual struggles we're in, then workers would say, wait a second, this isn't so bad. These conditions aren't so bad. Look, there's all these people doing all this other stuff. Let's do what they're doing. Let's learn from them. And it reacts upon it. And that's, by the way, it's very consciously stopped, that communication. So we have to consciously push for this communication. We have to consciously push and use our power, like you said, the union money and so on, democratically decide how to do this, to be able to make every local struggle a national struggle. An injury to one is an injury to all. To bring back that labor history, that sense of union power that has been largely lacking.
And we're speaking with Erek Slater, who is a transit worker, 17 years, and running for president of the local, and has been fired and threatened verbally and physically, not only by the company, but by union officials. And Nick Krietman, who is his attorney, labor attorney, who's representing him. And you have a campaign going, a petition campaign. How can people support you, Erek, to demand justice, to demand that you get your job back and the retaliation stop against you?
Yeah, we have a petition. I think the biggest thing people can do right now is join the struggle for better public transportation in the city of Chicago, and every city. It's a national crisis.
Yeah. I mean, the attack on transit workers, the violence against transit workers happens every day all over the country.
Yeah, if workers are able to take back their locals or their union, then it changes almost everything in that local area, and join with the workers union. We're gonna form a solidarity committee. It'll be controlled by the workers, and we will maintain our democratic control of it. But we encourage, public that wants better public transportation, that sees the leadership that public transit workers and other unionized workers and other non-unionized workers have, and join with that power. We saw it with the Chicago Teachers Union quite considerably when they were able to reform their local and had a big strike in 2012. Much of the social justice fighters, the the fight against police brutality, the many of the other struggles going around the city, saw that power and saw that, and were attracted to it. And it became, that union, which only was 20 or 30,000 workers in a city of many million, was able to have a disproportionate force. And I think that shows the capacity of working people. Just this one union. Imagine if we had a couple other unions. We were able to, federate with each other, work together. We could begin to be another ruling class. We could push aside the current people who are ruining the society and messing up everything, and they looking at their toes, knowing it's so bad. They don't have any solutions to this violence. We got people taking out guns in public events and just shooting people right all over the place, and people are like, we have no idea what to do at the very tops of power. Well, they need to step aside and let the working people make these decisions. We know what to do, right? We lead our families. We do our work very, very well. We are responsible, moral people amongst the most in human society. And you can see this when workers are able to organize within a union, and that union is able to actually reflect the interests of the workers that are part of that union, and its periphery, its family, its communities, its supporters. And that's a way forward for humanity, not just necessarily to get nuts and bolts, which we definitely will get. On day one, we're going to have a different orientation towards management in my local. On the first week or two, we will have classes building the level, the knowledge level of the ranks. We will be calling on hopefully dozens, if not hundreds, of shop stewards to come directly to the workplace to massively transform our working conditions and our quality of life within months. That's possible if workers take hold of their union and see it as theirs and use it. And so we're asking workers to not just vote people in, we're asking workers who do vote to make a commitment to giving at least 2 hours of their time a month of going to a union meeting, of participating, voting, discussing, debating, participating in worker democracy, of going to a committee of your choice, be a PIC committee, a retiree committee, a fired, laid off worker committee, all those different committees that are supposed to be the normal functioning of a healthy, breathing union, of a rank and file led union. But it cannot just be done by voting for somebody. It ain't like the Chicago Bears where you can watch them and see them fight it out. No, we gotta get in there and do the fighting, of doing the organizing, of doing the leading in our communities. And that's quite possible in this historical moment. I'm very excited about this moment.
Okay, well, I want to thank you very much for joining us. And I think this is an important struggle, not just for Chicago transit workers, but for all workers in this country and around the world who face similar fights. So thanks for joining us today.